Welcome back to another episode of Georgia Sports Nation. We got some more Hawks content on the way for you guys today. We're going to be discussing a rather uneventful deadline for the Atlanta Hawks. They ended up not making a single trade. There were a lot of teams expected to be really active at the deadline who also did the same. The Bulls did not make a trade. The Wizards didn't get rid of Tyus Jones, Kyle Kuzma. They got Daniel Gafford out of there, but they didn't make as many moves as they were expected to. Same with the Raptors with Bruce Brown. The Lakers stood pat. So, really, overall, this deadline was, in my opinion, a little bit underwhelming, especially from what it had been, say, about a month and a half ago, leading up to this February 8th date. But we're going to be discussing what it is from a Hawks standpoint, what this means for this season and beyond, and really what happened in the deadline, because it's definitely a fun day to be on NBA Twitter just to look at what has happened. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we'll start off with the Hawks' point of view because that is what we're ultimately here to do. Everybody knew that this roster was up for trades except for Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. Now, Kobe Buffkin was rumored to be untouchable as well, but Gano Onyeka, Kangwu, Bogdan Bogdanovic, the next tier of guys that probably the front office was not going to trade. But Clint Capella, DeAndre Hunter, Dejounte Murray. Those three guys were Sadiq Bey as well. Four guys were the biggest names that were up for trade for serious consideration, and they ended up not going anywhere. That wasn't because the Hawks did not try to trade them. It was going up until the buzzer, particularly with the Pelicans, as Adrian Wojnarowski reported, and so also Shams Charania, that the Pelicans and the Hawks really were in advanced talks about a trade featuring Dejounte Murray and Herb Jones. Onyeka Okongwu was also thrown in there a little bit, but I think that was where the Hawks drew the line. And if I was the Hawks, I would do the same. But the Pelicans didn't want to budge on Herb Jones. And for me, that's something that I was surprised about, because a report came out in January, at the beginning of last month, that the Pelicans aren't going to be able to pay everybody after this year. They're going to have to pay Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion, Brendan Ingram, all these guys that they're going to have to commit to the books. They're not going to have enough money to do it. So reporters thought they would choose between Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. In the end, the Pelicans didn't even do much. They stood pat with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. And overall, Atlanta did the same. Now, the Hawks were also in talks with the Knicks. The Knicks and the Pelicans were really the final two teams that were being reported to have the final say. But the Knicks ended up making a lot of moves this deadline. They traded Quentin Grimes and 2 second-round picks to the Pistons for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. A really good move for the Knicks, if you ask me. They were really active, and Quentin Grimes was one of the players, the young players that the Hawks wanted from the Knicks in a potential move for Dejounte Murray. So that pretty much took the Knicks out of it once they made that trade pretty early within the deadline madness, probably about an hour before that 3 p.m. deadline. So really, after that, it was just the Pelicans. And the Hawks didn't do anything. Woj ended up tweeting probably around 5 minutes before the deadline ended, saying no trade for Dejounte Murray. The Hawks are not going to move him. And was I shocked about that? Yes, because of all the reporting and what the Hawks seemingly wanted to do. But I can't say I'm totally shocked, like didn't see this coming at all. This came completely out of left field. And that's because the offers that the Hawks were getting, or even earlier before the deadline, weren't really that great. And yes, it's great for Atlanta to have a sense of direction. It really doesn't move the needle as far as just doing nothing. This team is sitting under 500, not really going anywhere at the moment. It's not the greatest look for the front office. But in the end, there's always draft night after the summer. My main concern, though, is some of the teams that the Hawks were competing with, to get to the play-in at this point. I don't think they can make the playoffs. They got a little bit better. So I don't know. Can the Hawks still get into the play-in and make a run to the playoffs via the play-in? I think they ultimately will. just because they still have Trae Young, they still have Dejounte Murray. The Bulls did nothing at this deadline. They got worse. The Magic stood pat at the deadline. The Miami Heat, I mean, they got Terry Rozier a couple weeks ago, like a week ago. But other than that, they've been struggling too. So those are the three teams ahead of the Hawks in the play-in race. And the Nets also, I mean, the Nets kind of got better with that Dennis Schroeder for Spencer Dinwiddie deal. But in the end, those three teams that I just mentioned above the Hawks got worse. So, or didn't do anything. So the Hawks still have a chance to kind of make the play-in here. But yeah, Frank, seeing lots of people clowning the Hawks for doing nothing, and I completely understand that. I mean, if it was up to me, I would have wanted to see some direction from the front office. Either are you going to buy or are you going to sell? But I wouldn't have wanted them to do nothing because this season kind of seems like a wash right now. They're competing but not doing well. But if they weren't competing, they're still playing Trae, Dejounte, Jalen. And Jalen, in my opinion, needs to be the priority, especially developing him as a second option. If they're going to core this team around Trae and Jalen, then you need to feature Jalen more every single night, in my opinion. And Dejounte being here, that's going to hurt him. That also hurts Jalen because Dejounte and Jalen don't really have complementary play styles, especially on the offensive end. So it was a bit confusing for me as well. But let's talk about some other players. But yeah, Dejounte is probably the biggest name that I was definitely confused on why they didn't trade him. Clint Capella. Now, it might be easy for some people who are really big on Okongwu. I am, to say, oh, why can't the Hawks get rid of Clint Capella, man? They already have Onyeka Okongwu. It should just be easy, take a second round pick for him, salary dump, blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, Clint's contract prevents that. Being owed $22 million next season, and on the kind of decline that Capella has been on, it's not great. It also didn't help that he's out 7 to 10 days right now with a left adductor strain. So it probably was really hard for the Hawks to try to attach maybe a second round pick or something for to take on that Clint Capella contract. Objectively, the Hawks didn't fail, but at the same time, yeah, they didn't win. Yeah, I just think doing nothing was just playing it so safe, and playing it safe right now just yields to me no direction. They didn't fail because they didn't salary dump DeAndre Hunter, who would have been bad if he was that salary dump. They didn't salary dump Dejounte Murray, even though he's on a great contract. He should never even be consideration for that. So I see what you're saying, but for me, they've got to come up with a direction. And yes, Ladderman, I agree 100% with you. And we're gonna go into this a little bit later in the show, but they have to play their younger players now. If this season comes in where it is clear that the Hawks are going to be the 10th seed in the play-in, I think they've created a little bit of distance of themselves from Brooklyn, who's the 11th seed right now. But they have to play their young guys just and get internally just better development wise, maturity wise. I want to see those guys get some court time. But I wanted to talk about DeAndre Hunter a little bit Clint Capella. I didn't finish on him. The Hawks have to see what they have in Onyeka Okongwu in 30 minutes. And right now, that looks pretty good. Capella, like I said, out with that left adductor strain, 7 to 10 days. Okongwu has had 2 great games starting, playing 30-plus minutes. And that's what a lot of fans who are high on Okongwu have said. I've always been a proponent of give Okongwu 30 minutes, see what he can do. Because in 20 minutes, you can't expect him to get the rebounds that Clint Capella does. You can't expect him to impact the game in 7, 6, 8 less minutes than Capella does. But you're seeing the Hawks offense just flow a lot better. Onyeka is a lot better at defending the perimeter, switching onto guards, being more lateral in the pick and roll, kind of being back there to rotate all the back line. So I think for the Hawks, they're going to try to still trade Clint Capella maybe on draft night next season. But then again, I don't think it was 100% needed for the Hawks to trade Clint Capella now. He's going to be more valuable on an expiring contract next season. More teams will get more draft picks. I just think the priority will be going forward. That should be give Okongwu 30 minutes. You can play Clint Capella. You can start him if you want to. but you cannot prioritize him because the value of Capella is pretty much known around the league already. It's not high, unfortunately. Jake Fisher reported that several times, probably like a month or so ago in Spaces, as well as his articles on Yahoo Sports. So yeah. And Frank says, yeah, seeing teams using second round picks, young players like the Knicks, the Hawks could have attempted something to improve. Yeah, even marginally. Yeah. Yeah, I would have liked to see that as well. And how the hell are they going to deal with this in the offseason? In draft night, a lot of trades happen. That's if you're being an optimistic fan, that's the optimistic fan coming out in me saying, okay, maybe they can do something in the offseason. But next season, Capella might be more valuable just because he's on that expiring contract. Contending teams could want Capella. Maybe they go down a backup center. You see the Knicks, how many center injuries they've had this season. And contending teams probably didn't want to commit longer-term money to Capella. And that would help the Hawks be able to get rid of him if it is an unfortunate salary dump for next season. So that's my thoughts on Clint Capella. I didn't think he was going to get dealt, but I thought he was the second. I thought the person that was going to get dealt was Murray. The other ones, I didn't think any other move was going to happen, to be honest. But here we are with no moves. The next player, DeAndre Hunter. I never thought DeAndre was going to be moved, honestly. He had that knee procedure, the non-surgical one. He missed about a month and a half. Then he comes back, plays well for the first couple games. But his role on this team right now is kind of set. Saddiq Bey is going to be a free agent after this year. I don't think the Hawks are going to pay him or have to overpay him for what he garners in free agency. And that spot will go right to DeAndre Hunter. Dejounte Murray is kind of the wild card here because he's on great long-term money, a great contract. Shout out to Landry Fields and Dejounte both for agreeing to that, putting that on the books. But if Dejounte's not in the long-term plans for this team or the front office, which it doesn't seem like they were because they were exploring trading Dejounte even from the beginning of the season, then he's kind of the odd man out, and you've got to kind of figure out what everybody else's role is once Dejounte's future is figured out. Because, whatever you want to say about Dejounte, he is by far the second best player on this team. So you need to figure out what you're going to do with him. Jalen, hopefully in the future, will be that guy. But I don't know. It's gonna be tough for the Hawks, really, for Hawks fans, I'm guessing, to say, okay, this season, the Hawks did nothing. We can see what we can do in the offseason, but they've said that for 2 years in a row pretty much now. I mean, they did do the Saddiq Bey trade, which was a good trade. 5 second rounders was a bit too much in my opinion, but Saddiq has, and last year for sure, produced better than what I thought he did with the Hawks. So that was a good trade there. But other than that, Atlanta's really never done much on draft night overall the past few days or years. And it says, wondering if a big reason Dejounte wasn't traded was because Tony Ressler didn't want to admit that trade was a mistake. Yeah, there's that too. There's definitely that too. The NBA is a business. That's all I'll say to that. And I don't think as an owner, if you want to be successful, after you've had this sample size that you've had with Trey and Dejounte, I don't think you can say, okay, I need to save face. Save Dejounte here, see what this team can do, judging from what you've seen this season. I would hope that that's not the reason. If it is, I don't have much faith in the team, putting together a good squad around Trey and Jalen. But that certainly could be true. Unfortunately, that could be the case because of these GMs and owners. I hate being embarrassed. Yeah, and it's the same thing with players. Players understand better than GMs and NBA owners, for the most part, in my opinion, that the NBA is a business, and players get traded. They're always coming out and saying, I appreciate the organization, what they did, but the NBA is a business. And GMs and owners, they don't really come out and say that a lot. Other than for players that meant a lot to the organization. For example, Damian Lillard, that's something completely different in that trade last offseason. But the owners, And that would be bad. That would be bad if that happened too, because then that would mean we pretty much already know this as Hawks fans, but Tony Wrestler does have some say in the basketball operations. That's what fans tend to believe. And if he came out and said that, or hinted at it, that would mean that he's has a firm hand on what this team can do basketball wise and financial wise, which is it's just not good in my opinion. Next player I want to move to is Saddiq Bey. As Saddiq, he could have helped some teams. He could have helped the Houston Rockets, who need shooting. The Pelicans need shooting. The Orlando Magic, who stayed pat at the deadline, they needed shooting. But Saddiq stayed here. The Hawks didn't do anything. And I'm not shocked by that because he hopefully he's figured something out with his shooting. He's been doing well over the past couple of games with his shot from beyond the arc. And he's also an expiring contract. So if the Hawks want to shed salary and get money off the books, keeping Saddiq here and then just not – you can offer him a qualifying offer in restricted free agency after the season. But he doesn't have to take that. And it'll be easy for the Hawks to just say, okay, thank you, Saddiq, for a year and a half here, but your expiring contract, we kept you just because you wouldn't be on the books for next season. That'd be okay. As far as a Tony Wrestler perspective right there. Because as of right now, the Hawks are in the tax with this roster after the deadline. Or after the season, sorry. Atlanta cannot keep every single guy on this roster because you will have the Dejounte Murray money kicking in. DeAndre Hunter's contract extension will kick in. And then if you sign Saddiq Bey, bam, over the tax. And historically, we know that the Hawks, Tony Wrestler, are not a team and an owner to want to go into the luxury tax and pay to have this team kind of be more of a spot in the contention. So it's not a good thing for the Hawks that they stood pat, in my opinion, just because they're in the same predicament. We know this team wants to shed salary. That was already reported. But now it looks like they're going to have to do all of that in the offseason. And doing it all at one time makes you look desperate, in my opinion. And I don't think it's going to be good for the Hawks. I think they'll try and trade Dejounte Murray again, probably in the offseason, maybe draft night. But even then, I don't really think that his value is going to be as high as it was this time because he was the best player on the market, number one. Also, there were teams that really wanted him and who needed him. The Knicks, for example, they got desperate with their injuries. The Pelicans really wanted Dejounte. The Lakers wanted Dejounte for the longest time. But, yeah, Frank says, I never understood when y'all say shed money. Is it really just to save money or some hopeful idea of throwing money to some play in the offseason? Yeah, it's to save money. It's because Tony Wrestler hasn't paid the tax historically with this team, the luxury tax. So shedding to shed salary means to either get an expiring contract so that they're not on the books for next season, and that saves money going into the offseason, or getting rid of some players on contract for expiring or draft picks so that they make the team cheaper. And something that I will credit Landry Fields for last season was, was it last season or is it the offseason? I think it was both, actually. He made the team marginally better. Saddiq Bey makes the team marginally better with saving some money. That Garuba trade, Ty Washington, the Justin Holiday stuff from last season too. That trade saved the Aaron Holiday. That trade saved the Hawks money, and it got them better. So that was good. That was a good move from Landry. But other than that, he's not really had the greatest tenure this year, I would say. To be fair, I want to go over some of the bigger deals on the deadline as well, other than the Hawks, just to kind of give my perspective on it. I think the Knicks and the Mavs really did well this deadline. The Mavs getting Daniel Gafford for Sean Holmes, that's a great move. Gafford's clearly better than Holmes, and with Lively being injured on and off the court so many times recently, Gafford is somebody he'll go to the locker room sometimes, but he's been overall consistent. He's a great shot blocker. He's going to provide a great lob threat for Luka and Kyrie, and as a shot blocker, that's nice, especially when you have that backcourt. So, Frank, I think the Mavs did well right there with Gafford. And then PJ Washington. Now, this move is a little bit more controversial. I saw some fans saying, why did the Mavs do this? PJ Washington, they acquired him for pretty much unprotected first-round pick, and Grant Williams. I think PJ Washington is a better player than Grant Williams, and he can slot in, play a small ball 5, play the 4. He was on the Hornets. He's pretty good, but also I don't think he was ever playing the role that he's meant to with the Hornets, especially when he was at the 5. He's more of a 4. Now he's going to be able to play at the 4 pretty much all the time with Gafford and Lively there. And I think that makes the team better. PJ's not as great of a defender as Grant Williams, especially in the perimeter, but he's still a little bit bigger. So it gives you more size. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, Mavs deadline was really good. And then the Knicks. I think the Knicks did a pretty good job as well. Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks from the Pistons go to New York for Quentin Grimes and 2 second-round picks. That's what I mentioned before. The Knicks are really banged up right now. In fact, for tonight's game, the Knicks only have 8 players available. OG Anunoby is going to miss 3 weeks due to elbow surgery. He's going to resume basketball activities after that, so it's a minimum of 3 weeks. And Bojan, scorer, Alec Burks, shooter and scorer. You can operate in the pick and roll. I think that really helps the Knicks. So the Knicks and the Mavs, in my opinion, were the two clear winners at this deadline. Yeah, Frank says, yeah, I'm more excited with Gafford than PJ. PJ is nice. Kind of hope the Mavs didn't spend a first, but it's all the Mavs had to spend, so I'm okay with it. Yeah, that's the more controversial move, in my opinion. I know some Mavs fans were a little bit disappointed that they gave up that first. It's for PJ. But I think the Gafford move is a no-brainer. That's definitely a good move for you guys for sure. Other teams that kind of was shocked that I was shocked would stand pat. The Lakers. They definitely are not doing well right now. LeBron is always active around that deadline. Wanted to make his teams better, and they stood pat. Not something the Lakers do very commonly. Jared Vanderbilt went down with an injury, and he could miss the whole regular season. So the Lakers are not in a good spot, I would say, if you ask me, after today's deadline. The Mavs gave up a 2027 first-round pick, Grant Williams, and Seth Curry as well. Forgot about that for PJ Washington. But PJ is a quality player, but that is a lot. That is a lot to give up. So I can see both sides. I don't think it's a ridiculous take to say that trade was perfect, or I mean that trade was bad, or that trade was really good. It's kind of more in the middle for me. Any type of side there has an argument. Another thing with PJ and the first is for contenders. Picks shouldn't matter. So why I'm not upset about losing it just because they're trying to win. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm really big on as well, Frank. When you move picks, it should be strategic. What year it is, how good you think your team will be that season, and it was a 2027 pick. By that time, I mean Luka will be in his prime. Hopefully, Kyrie will still be there from a Mavs fan perspective, and y'all having a great season so far. So they can afford to give up a couple firsts. And then the biggest move was obviously Pat Bev to the Bucks. That was kind of funny. Patrick Beverley. I wonder if he was the first person in NBA history to tweet from his podcast account that he was getting traded, and then he beat Woj to his own trade. That was pretty funny. But yeah, Markeith, I saw that the Lakers are aiming for the offseason to upgrade their roster. I wonder how Lakers fans feel about that. I didn't really get a sense of that today, but it is interesting to me just because they've always been a team to really say, okay, we're going to get players here no matter what. People want to come play with LeBron. People want to come to LA, play basketball. Staples Center. Well, it's not Staples Center anymore, but you know the purple and gold, all that. But it was kind of shocking to me that Woj reported pretty early within the deadline madness that the Lakers are going to stand pat. Frank, in my opinion, players-wise, we didn't lose anything. Grant underperforming. Yeah, Seth hardly played. That wasn't a big deal. Grant Williams, I'm not sure how he was defensively, but he was shooting pretty well from three, if I do remember. Yeah, I completely agree with this one. The Lakers fans hated that they didn't do anything because they have LeBron, and he's just only going to get older. Yeah, the Lakers. I completely agree with you guys. The Lakers fans are probably mad about this, and I would be too. You don't know if LeBron's going to be what he's doing. He's going to be 40, and I agree with you, Ant. I don't think they have the time to make it happen. If they want, say they go after Dejounte Murray again, right? In the offseason. Now that's good and all, but if LeBron can't do what he's doing right now, which is definitely possible, then you're going to have Dejounte Murray and Anthony Davis. Now, Dejounte's on a great contract, so that's not bad. But can LeBron take a seat back and kind of let Murray cook in a way if he's not what he's doing, or he's not who he has been these past few years, even though he's been up? I don't know. So, yeah, I was kind of confused about that from a Lakers perspective. Also, the 76ers. 76ers get Cam Payne and 2 seconds going to the Bucks for Patrick Beverley. And then they also got Buddy Hield from the Pacers. The 76ers could be in free fall right here. Maxi's really struggling without Embiid. Tobias Harris has been out. They've got an injured roster. Obviously, Embiid might miss the entire regular season. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. So getting Buddy Hield, getting that extra bit of offense is definitely needed. They needed the shooting. And I think Buddy will do pretty well with the 76ers. Obviously, he was kind of a staple of that Indiana offense because of how much they shot the three ball, how fast they played, and just kind of the staple in Rick Carlisle's offense over there in Indiana. But I think it was a good move from the 76ers for sure. Now, as we get back to the Hawks here, I do want to discuss what is the future for this team. And a couple of years from now, say 2 to 3 years down the line, what is the goal? Now, for me, I think the Hawks do need to prioritize some of their younger players at the end of this year. If they're locked into the plan or they miss the plan, I want to see Kobe Buckton play. I want to see AJ play as well. I want to see the guys, try and mess around Trey and Jalen. And who knows? If Dejounte's still here, if he's going to be part of the long-term plan, sure. He's a good player. I don't think he necessarily fits perfectly on this team. But if he's going to be here for the long term, if that's now the move from the front office, then you should be able to, if you're Quinn Snyder, if you're Landry Fields, be able to build a roster that works around Trey, DJ, and Jalen for the next couple of years. And how they're going to do that, the easiest way is going to be internal development. Seth Lundy, Muhammad Gay, Kobe Buffkin, AJ Griffin is still here, a guy that I didn't even talk about in the beginning of the show, but he was likely to get traded as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Marquis says the Hawks need size in the front court for starters. Yeah, and that's what I think they're going to get with Muhammad Gay. I think he's really in the long-term plans for this organization. Onyeka Okongwu, obviously not the biggest center. He does provide a lot of stuff that Clint Capella can't, and same thing on the other side, vice versa. But Okongwu's versatility is really valuable. Playing next to Jalen, who's taller for his position, definitely helps. Off from the outside, I can't tell what the Hawks are trying to do. Teams like the Mavs and Knicks, you can easily tell what they're trying to do, but the Hawks, I have no idea. Yeah, they didn't need to trade Murray because they know they can do it later, especially on draft night. But in my opinion, I would have looked to trade him for sure because he's the best player in the market. I think the offers would have been the best right now. My hot take is that their plans are on pause until DJ is traded. They don't have many assets, and the best available person they have to trade is DJ. Yeah, I don't know. They have, but I hope they stick with whatever they have in mind right now. Obviously, there's no way for us to know that. But this team has been so many. Okay, do they go Trey and Jalen? No. DJ's still here. Do they build around Trey, DJ, and Jalen? Okay, they just went and got Dejounte 2 years ago. Now you've got to get him in the mix. Then the Eastern Conference Final team, they don't make a move after that. Like, there's been so many different directions this team has gone in. I hope they can stick with something. So if they're going to stick with Dejounte being here, then at least do it till like next year's deadline. Or if they're still trying to trade him before the season starts at draft night. Don't go into training camp with this exact same roster if that's not the plan, because then it's just been it's going to be the Hawks' downfall for what has been multiple years. Switching directions so many times, not having continuity between the front office and the ownership. So that's just what I'm worried about. But the near future, let's say these final 2.5 months, biggest thing, I want to see some of the young players play. I want to see how, if Dejounte is going to be in the long-term plans, how can he really mesh with Jalen? I think we can tell on the offensive end. Well, defensively, it doesn't work with Trey and Dejounte. But offensively, Dejounte has adjusted well, in my opinion, to what Quinn has asked him to do, to what, as far as a three-point shot, getting to the rim, playing faster, making quicker decisions. I think that he's done well to adjust to that. But how can Dejounte adjust his game, and how can Jalen adjust his game to playing well with Dejounte on the court when Trey is not there? Because Jalen plays pretty much every single minute on the court with Trey. Trey will still play with Murray a little bit, but it's really Trey and Jalen who are the two guys that have always been on the court together. So how can Dejounte kind of fit into those plans if that's the long-term solution for the Hawks? And then beyond the next few years, will the Hawks try to like quote unquote retool, or will they try to rebuild? I don't think this team is gonna like scrap down the so many parts and just strip it to where it's just Trey and Jalen. I don't think they're going to do that because, well, one, I don't think Trey would want to, and two, they want to always compete, especially because it brings a ticket. Fans hate to say this, but to see this, but it brings in season ticket holders back. It sells tickets, and Atlanta's big in the entertainment industry, and that's one of the best ways to entertain yourself in Atlanta is a Hawks game. People are still going to the arena, so I don't think. And Tony Ressler, especially, I don't think he would want the organization to come out and say, okay, we're rebuilding. But other than that, I did want to, before we end here, I did want to preview a little bit of the Hawks and Sixers on Friday, because we now know this team is not going to be any different now. We know this team pretty much from now until the end of the year. So it's going to be nothing different. But for me, this is all going to start with the Hawks attacking the paint if they can bounce back in the win column against Philly. They've not done well. They're without Joel Embiid. If the Hawks can get into the paint, especially I'm looking at Trey and Jalen, if those guys can get into if those guys are being defended well, the 76ers have good perimeter defenders. You got Pat Bev, you got Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington's probably going to be out, but DeAnthony Melton could be back. If Trey and Jalen are being guarded by those guys, I'm going to look for Dejounte Murray to really try to be aggressive and get to the rim. Paul Reed, obviously not the best shot blocker compared to what Embiid is. So that's what I want to see the Hawks do. Second, it's going to sound strange, but force Maxey to beat you. Don't get hurt by all the others. Maxey has been really good this season, was an all-star and deservedly so, in my opinion. But there's been some struggles for sure for him without the MVP Embiid next to him. He's really struggling with the efficiency. The three-point shot is down. And I forgot the deadline. Yeah, you're right, Frank. Pat Bev is on the Bucks now. But these guys are really struggling. Maxey, if the Hawks can force him to take a ton of shots and kind of be the only person to beat them, then I think the Hawks are in good position. And then lastly, can the Hawks move the ball well? We've seen throughout these two games that Clint Capella's been out, the offense has flowed really, really well. That they've shot a lot of threes, they've hit a lot of threes, and they're starting to make shots. In January, the Hawks offense really struggled, but their defense was rated 18th and defensive rating. That's enough for this team to have success. So offensively, I really want this team to keep flowing like they've been the past couple of games. And Frank asked, would y'all risk trading for Embiid, say in the offseason if he's made available? I don't think so because he is getting older. I mean, I think Embiid is 30. If I'm not mistaken there. Yes, Joel Embiid is how old is Joel Embiid? He is 29. Okay, so I don't think the Hawks would go for Embiid just because I don't think they have all the picks and the assets to do it. Honestly, I think Trey and Embiid would be a great pairing, obviously, and Trey would have somebody down low he can get the ball to and create his own shot and protect the paint and everything. I just don't think it's feasible for the Hawks to do so, but that would be a nice pairing in my opinion. Even though Embiid, he's had his playoff struggles here and there. And the injury risk is always something that pops up. So me personally, I don't think I would do it just because it would probably take every single asset the Hawks had, and they don't have a lot of picks. So I don't think it would be worth it in the end. Now, say fast forward 4 years later, they get a chip, but he leaves, then it's worth it. Because in my opinion, if you win a championship, any move is worth it. For that directly resulted to that. So, for example, the Lakers winning the bubble championship after they traded, all those guys, Kuzma, Ingram, Lonzo Ball, all those guys from that draft and from that young, terrible Lakers team, they still won a championship with that AD trade. So, in my opinion, good trade. That's how I kind of view it. But yeah, I think the Hawks right now they're in a state of consistency. At least they know what they're going to be for the next 2.5 months. Let's see if consistency will do this team some good, because at this point, nobody's really going anywhere. So with that, it's a little bit of a shorter episode today, but I appreciate you guys joining. In. We'll be back next week, same time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, we started a little bit late today, but we'll see what the Hawks can do in these next few months. And can they make a run, get out of the play-in, and get into the playoffs? Let's hope so, because this is now the team we know they're going to be going in with to the offseason. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.